I didn't expect this at all. It's a really,
All good, brother.
really welcome relief actually on a race weekend.
Good. James Sullivan, AKA Sully. So happy to be sitting here with you. Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Battle on the Bricks, TireRack.com. This is a huge part of the year for you and the Vasser Sullivan racing team, your partners at Lexus.
Yep.
Love coming to Indianapolis like every IMSA team loves to do. You, in particular,
Yeah.
you got to do something very few human beings on the planet have ever done.
Oh my.
Go into victory lane.
Yeah.
Here, the Indy 500. Your story, your team co-owner, Jimmy Vasser, IndyCar champion, open wheel, that's your roots.
Yep.
We're going to talk about that, learn about your formation, where you two came together to start this Vasser Sullivan Lexus program. But before we get to that and this rich history, championship-winning IMSA team you've created, for the IndyCar stuff, I want to go back to Sully. We want to get to know you.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, you must have been high school All-American, college, baseball, football, something involved. No, I know the real story here. Tell us where you grew up and tell us about your collegiate pursuits, because the route from where you started to where you are today, there's no path. I don't understand it. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, Marshall, thanks for having me. I was raised in Houston, and I was a musician. And I went to college on a full ride for music. I certainly wasn't getting in on my grades.
Yeah.
Band. I just was not going in on my grades. But music was all my life, from 5th grade all the way up through halfway through college, really, right? And so much of, let's call it dedication, perseverance, I take from music, and I apply it in business, I apply it in motorsport. It was really formative for me.
What instruments?
It was bassoon and percussion. So multilingual, if you will, but that's what got me into Baylor University, was the ability to be a drummer and to be a classical bassoonist, right? And I think most people would lose a bet if they looked at Sully and they said, oh yeah, that guy's a classical bassoonist, and it is a fact. It's a major part of my life, huge part of my life. I don't come from a family of musicians. I don't come from a family of drivers or racers.
Yeah, racing was
right?
just...
Nope. Never
this
was
isn't
me.
something where from the age of 3 years old, mom put you in a go-kart.
No.
This is a passion you found in life,
Yeah.
compared to something you were born into. And the musical angle is the one that I love, because that is certainly passion stoked, but there's a precision element to it. There's a lot of structure to it.
Yeah.
Planning involved.
Yeah.
You think about those who come into motor racing from other sports, they tend to succeed because they're used to that structure.
Yeah.
There's an organization to it. As wild as it sounds, being a classically trained bassoonist, the same structure is there for you to apply not just to racing, but business.
Oh, yeah.
So coming out of Baylor, you say, what do I do next in life?
Yeah. Well, when I grew up, it was dirt bikes, jet skis, go-karts, but I never drove anything. I never raced anything, right? And I get it now. Oh, so you're not a racer. And I was like, no, I'm not a driver. And I sure as hell am a racer, but yes, I'm not a driver. But I didn't grow up racing. But I grew up with a love. I was a gearhead. I was a motorhead. If I could, I raised money mowing lawns and doing silly stuff like other young kids to try to pay for the go-kart and the jet ski and those things, right? So the motor side of things and the entrepreneurial spirit of things, they were always kind of interwoven for me from a very young age. But my motorsport love, the hook for me, was created in college. No question. Yes, I went to Baylor, and I did learn some things, contrary to most people's thoughts at Baylor. And I did meet my beautiful wife Amanda there. But it's true that only thing everyone wants to talk about at Baylor was that I was the Baylor Bear. It's the fact. I was the Baylor Bear mascot.
Yes.
So you can find it on YouTube. Sully Bruiser was live and in action for a 2-year period. I was pounding Pedialites between football games because I was losing 7 pounds in the green fuzzy bear suit. It's hot as hell in there, but it was great times. But college for me was where I went to my first auto race. And
Tell us about that.
Yeah.
That infused something in you.
oh, it was a bomb. The bomb went off for me. I remember that day. In fact, I mean, look, you can't see the goosebumps, but well, maybe you can. I remember that day like it was yesterday. I remember everything about it, and it was the first major auto race that I ever attended. And people have heard the story. I went to see Third Eye Blind. I didn't go to the auto race, and if you went to the concert, you got the GA ticket the next day. And I didn't have a seat, a grandstand seat. I was at George R. Brown Convention Center in Houston.
Yep.
You remember that layout?
Yep.
Badass, or at least I thought it was.
Houston
I wasn't
Grand Prix.
driving.
Yep.
Just Texaco's, the whole bit, right? Like, I crawled up on top of this ambulance that was on the corner there on the other side of the convention center, and I'm laying on this ambulance, and I saw Gentlemen Start Your Engines from there. I saw the parade lap from there, and I think I lasted 4 or 5 laps before the medic and the security guard, yanked me off. It never happened in this day and age, for sure, but it was so sensory for me. And I still remember Gentlemen Start Your Engines and the crowd, the roar and so on. And it sounds like it's embellished or, that it's a movie or something. But for me, those are my memories of it, right? And that's where the hook came. And at the time, of course, I didn't know. But Kanan finished 3rd, Vasser finished 4th, and here we are. Now we're partners, and Kanan drove for us. And it was this time where you go back to it and you think, man, I'm laying on a damn ambulance up there watching these guys, and who would have known, what would come out of that. But that was it for me. And I mean, I rode the bus, the public transportation to get home, and I still remember the bus ride. And I was shaking with energy and with nerves. I had no connection, none, to auto racing. I was there purely as not even as a fan, but as someone that was like, okay, yeah, I've got this ticket, I may as well go. That's how laissez-faire it was for me. Okay, whatever. And I left there just completely mesmerized, by the whole thing, really. I have this vivid memory. It's the first time I saw an Indy car, or a kart at the time, and it was a Marlboro Team Penske. And I remember the day glow orange, the pearl white. I remember the BBS wheels. It was sitting there, and I mean, I stood and stared at this thing for what felt like an hour.
Looked like a rocket ship.
Yeah, it was the first time I've ever seen one up close, and I was on cloud 9, the whole time. But I remember coming back and seeing Dad, and I couldn't stop talking about this whole experience. And the interesting thing about it, Marshall, for me was I couldn't even see the damn racing because I didn't have the seat. Yeah. After I got off the ambulance, I didn't go sit anywhere. I was just peeking through the fence, trying to find a spot. The GA grandstand was full, of course, right? And so I fell in love with the cars and the environment before I fell in love with the actual racing itself.
Wow.
What's supposed to be the entertainment, right? The reason that people come. I didn't even really see that at that first race. It was all the rest of the sensory pieces that hooked me. So that was college for me. That's really where it started. I have vivid memories of being in the computer lab at Baylor, and instead of doing my assignment, I was studying fuel rigs and engineering stands and plumbing and trying to understand why does this team's look different than this team's. I was completely obsessed with it. This was before the onset of social media, for the most part. It was MySpace and a little Facebook and stuff, right? So I was on the track forums and the message boards, the fan boards, scouring and trying to understand every post that anyone ever wrote, and I would absorb it and try to understand this and what are they talking about and the drivers and so on. And I remember I found and read that there was an engine test at Texas Motor Speedway, and I skipped class.
Yeah.
And this story has actually never been told, and I know Chip doesn't know it, but he's gonna hear it. And I bought a Target Chip Ganassi raincoat off eBay for $11, and I had a Uniden scanner headset, and I skipped class and I drove to Texas Motor Speedway, and I got all the way to the tunnel. And I pulled up, and I had this scanner headset around my neck, and this
Looked
Target.
official.
Oh yeah, the eBay rain jacket. It was a piece of merch.
Wow.
Oh yeah, And she handed me the clipboard and I signed. And I went underneath the tunnel and there's not a soul in sight and it's a private engine test. And I got out of my car and I started walking towards the garage. I lasted 90 seconds before a guy walks out of the garage, looks at me and gives me that. And it was Barry Wanzer, right? So I've never to this day.
From Chip Ganassi Racing.
I've never told Chip that, hey, you bounced me out of your test but more importantly, I snuck in and I got in there, bud.
Wow.
So I was...
you were obsessed.
Obsessed with every single thing about it. And I think I was obsessed to learn. I was obsessed that this thing exists and I don't know anything about it, but I can't stay away from it. So I've got different stories along the way of where that obsession took me, if you will.
I want to know about the music major.
Yeah.
The mascot, all of these things that involve fun and entertainment. I know you as the business person, the person taking that passion for racing,
yeah,
and realizing that since you don't come from independent wealth,
yeah,
you're having to find partners, develop relationships to take that dream that's manifesting inside you,
yeah,
to make it more than your $11 eBay jacket and the scanner and turn it into, oh, I'm now at a motor racing event as a co-entrant, an entrant, a team owner. That is the part that I find so fascinating. Tell me about building that into yourself and building and developing that business knowledge, marketing knowledge.
Yeah. When I got out of school, college, Baylor, when I hung up the mascot suit, let's call it that, my first and only job was raising money for a motocross and a supercross team. And I had a guy, Michael Holligan, he took a bet on me, certainly gave me his trust to go and raise this money, to try to level up this supercross effort. And it was my first experience. I reported to a race shop in Dallas, a supercross and a motocross shop. I was the only non-mechanic rider or engineer in there. I reported to that shop every day. And that's where I started learning and was experienced and introduced to how does a team work, how does a shop work, how does it all run? Because by and large, whether it's 2 wheels or 4 wheels, there's some just basic structure of how a shop flows and how any competitive organization runs, right? That was the beginning of my immersement in the sport and learning that, man, if you are quote unquote selling logos, dude, you're up a creek, right? Well, no one taught me that. I had to learn the hard way of going in and pitching, if you will, cold pitching, hard pitching, and not getting laughed at, but just realizing that, man, I put a lot of work into this and I'm getting zero traction. So then you learn really quickly how the business world goes around, which is the same way that the motorsports community goes around, right? Which is you just have to provide value. And if you can provide value to these companies or individuals or partnerships, then they will come with you. And then better, if you're providing value and you can get them to buy into your vision and your visions are aligned, it's game on, right? It's game on. And my first experience with that was moto. And that's where I fell in love with dirt. I still have a huge soft spot for motocross and supercross. But there was a really special individual to me. It was Mark Johnson. And I don't say this lightly, but I mean, the fact is without Mark, there's no Jimmy and Sully. And without Mark, there's probably no Vasser Sullivan and there's no Lexus championship. I mean, you can really take it back that far. And why is that? He sat with me in a hotel bar and he said to me, kid, what is it that you want to do? And I remember this conversation just like I remember that Houston Grand Prix. And I said to him, I want to own companies and I want to put a car in the Indy 500. And Marshall, he was the first person that didn't laugh or didn't respond to, well, with what millions? And instead, he responded with, do you know Jimmy Vasser? And I said, no, I don't know him, but I watched him race in Houston. He finished P4 behind Tony Kanaan. Oh, you did? Yeah, I did. He goes, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you let me introduce you to him? I said, okay. So we went to Anaheim too. And if you know anything about Supercross in Anaheim, right, it's the cathedral there. And if you know anything about Anaheim and Supercross, you know the Knothole Club. And he took me up to the Knothole Club, and I met JV at the Knothole Club. And I introduced myself, and Mark gave me the stage. And I said, man, I just saw you race not too long ago, and in Houston. It's been a couple years. Oh, yeah, yeah. And I said, man, I'm going to come to IndyCar at some point. I'm going to look you up. And then he didn't laugh either. He said, go, bud. Typical JV fashion, right? Go, brother. All right. And we left the Knothole Club, and I continued on tour for a few years in Supercross. And a few years down the road, not too many, I was really fortunate to have some good success as a young businessman outside of motorsport. And it gave me the breathing room, the bandwidth to go chase this dream, which was to put a car in the Indy 500. And Marshall, the dream for me, I said put a car in the Indy 500. The dream for me never was to go compete or to win or to be in the top 5 as many times as we did. It was to show up. The dream was to start and just to get there. And as fate would have it, I called Mark Johnson. And I said, hey, bud, I've got some partnerships together. I've got some people together. And I'm going to come run a car in Indianapolis. And he said, well, guess what? I'm running Jimmy Vasser's team now. I've left motocross and supercross. I knew that. And I said, oh, really? Yeah. And I already, okay, box check, we're good there. He said, why don't we let you get the two of you guys together and let's start this conversation. So we did. And again, I remember that conversation so vividly. We met in the bus at Texas Motor Speedway at an IRL event. And he gave me the floor. And I said, hey, man, I've got some money. I've got some people. I've certainly got the energy. I want to come do this. And Marshall, in the first 5 or 10 minutes of that discussion, you could sense there was this urgency. Well, look, there's not a lot of drivers left. We got to get going. And I realized that they thought I was talking about May of 2010. And I said, no, guys, 16 months from now, a year and a half.
Smart.
And Jimmy goes, who the hell plans the Indy 500 what? And Mark was said, I told you, he's a little psycho and he's after this. So Jimmy said, well, what do you need from us? And I said, well, I'd start with a car and a driver and a shop and some people and he says, okay, I got it.
Everything.
So that really was where Jimmy and I's partnership was born and the creation of that. And I'm not going to make it a Cinderella story and say, oh yeah, we hit it off so great. I mean, I think they probably thought I was a freak, like what is this guy? Is he real? But I didn't have enough money or wealth to go put a car in the show myself and be fine. But I had enough from some success that I could designate and dedicate myself for a 16-month period and only do this and not take money from it and really try to punch in, right? So I in a way, I bet on myself in that period. And it's one of the best decisions that I ever made was to go chase this thing. And in all honesty, Marshall, I never had a 2012 Indy 500 or a 2013 in my mind. It was just get there and let's accomplish this dream, right? So it's fitting that we're here at Indianapolis because that's certainly, that's where it started.
And I love the fact, as you mentioned, at that Houston Grand Prix, you see Tony Kanaan finish 3rd, Jimmy Vasser finish 4th. Where are you in May of 2013?
Yeah.
Standing in victory lane with your co-owner and brother Jimmy Vasser as Tony Kanaan stands up and rises out of the cockpit of your car, fists raised to the sky, achieving the dream of his life while you achieve yours. And Vasser, an IndyCar champion, came close here at the 500,
he did.
goes to victory lane as a team owner. So again, you could not have written a better script as a launching pad. You then develop more new relationships in IndyCar, a lot of success there as well. Dear mutual friend Sebastian Bourdais. And then it's time for Vasser Sullivan to do something you'd been wanting to do, and that is to branch out. An opportunity, Lexus. Been in IMSA, new model, RCF GT3. New development, this new life for you and Vasser, and we get to see black and this day glow color as well. Partners that come along that are incredibly loyal. I love the fact that you went from a dream and nothing to finding and building your own tribe. That tribe continued along different places in open wheel and have decided that sports car racing. This is not only where we race, but this is our family, this is our tribe. And now Toyota, Lexus look to you as the tip of their spear in sports car racing. Let's talk about that move here, brother, because you're a champion here. Seemingly every big race IMSA has, you've won. You've got some of the greatest characters in your cars, from Parker Thompson to Jack Hawksworth, Tomahawk, we're calling them now. I mean,
It's out of control.
this is a thing, but tell me about this. I know you love being here.
I really do. So I say this now. So Jimmy and I have been partners, headed into our 15th year, which is incredible when you think about, the start at the Houston Grand Prix and representing Lexus with TRD and Toyota. It's been the honor of my motorsport career, and that's including the Indianapolis 500 win. That was an amazing moment, but when you really get a feeling for how much trust is being placed in you and how far that trust goes overseas and how far up the building it goes, it's not just we're going to go racing. I mean, this is who Toyota and Lexus are. They are a performance-based brand, and they have one team in the United States, and it's us. And that's a lot different than other manufacturers. It's a lot different scenario than other team owners are in. So I think we understood real quick what the assignment was. For me, I get driven by fear of failure as a person. So in music, I was always driven by fear of failure for an audition or a performance, always. In college was the same, not so much for grades and tests, but generally. Motorsport, fear of failure, it drives me. And when we handshook with Lexus and Toyota on this, the fear of failure set in, instantaneously. And for me personally, that's been the driver here, is not to let this trust down that they've placed in us. Sports car racing, when we first shook hands on this partnership, it was at the Long Beach Grand Prix at IndyCar. Well, I say that, it was where we first really discussed the possibilities. We shook hands a few months later, but we had 90 days to pull a team and a program together for the Rolex. And Jimmy's got a bit of sports car experience as a driver, but by and large, our partnership, our definition of endurance racing or our experience in endurance racing was the Indianapolis 500.
3 hours.
Yeah.
How cute.
How cute. And you get to 11 a.m. at the Rolex, and you realize as the eyes are going like this and you think, okay, I got to re-engage here. You've got an Indy 500 to go, bud.
So I look at what your team has achieved. You've come out of a long time in open wheel, full professional, full focus on nothing but best elite drivers. Embrace pro racing, GTD Pro you excel in. Also engaged in GTD with the Pro-Am model. Mm-hmm. Your team has expressed the ability to take great drivers and achieve amazing results and learn, because your organization has become better by competing in both categories.
Certainly.
The things you tell me about the metrics that you guys are looking at, driver change time, boy, we gotta tune this up a little bit. Is it pushing our drivers harder to go faster? Mm-hmm. Is there a process in how the seat change and insert goes? How could we do that? Mm-hmm. What are the little things that may be uncovering those little kernels of performance? Don't know if you had to look that hard when you've got a Tony Kanaan or Sebastian Boyd. They're the magic makers. Tell me about developing and learning as an institution, working in two different classes at IMSA. That's brought your team upwards.
Let me tell you something. It's been one of the greatest things of my career to be a part of a driver's growth. And the reason it's been so great is we just talked about all the IndyCar pieces. So when we started with Tony Kanaan. There was really not a whole lot to develop. And then it was Sebastian Bourdais, and then we have this run with Ferrucci. As a team owner, I had never the ability or the opportunity to take an individual and be a part of their climb. I didn't have it. Now, that's not a bad thing because we had some really good success and we had some really gnarly pilots, right, driving our race cars. And we had that opportunity here, and we created a mantra, and it's no joke, it's serious for us, and it's built, not bought. And it doesn't always work that way, because sometimes you gotta buy something or buy somebody. But if you have the opportunity to build an individual at the same time as building the structure of your race team, then it can end up with some pretty cool results. And when Kyle Kirkwood first came to us, he hadn't yet been in an Indy Lights car. He was an Indy Pro driver, right? And we were able to be a part of his development as a young racing driver. When Tielitz first came to us, he was in endurance rounds. When Parker Thompson first came to us, he was an endurance round driver. Being able to take these guys from a starting position and take them up through the organization, it's been immensely gratifying to be a part of that. If I back up, a piece that we never talked about was we did a stint in rallycross.
Yes.
And I have to tell you, the reason I bring that up is because we started that in 2013. So I am 2 years into team ownership. And my first driver was Scott Speed. And yes, it was a small little local rallycross, but it was the X Games, and it was great, and we loved it, right? And it was this really interesting mix of where I came from, which was dirt, and where I was headed from, which was pavement racing, and you combine the two together and put a jump, and you say, why not? This makes sense for Sully to race into, right? But when you sit down with a guy like Scott Speed, you think, man, he's trusted me with his career. He's raced at the top level of the sport globally in Formula One. And after him came Nelson Piquet Jr., raced at the top level of the sport globally in Formula One. That period for me was an incredible education because I was a sponge as an owner. I was a sponge while, even though it was a small but successful team, I learned so much from what those guys want out of a race car or an organization or out of their next step in their careers. It was really, really formative for me. But the reason I bring that up is those guys had arrived. They had already done it. They had the skins on the wall. And this was something still professional, but let's call it semi-recreational that they're gonna go run. But they entrusted me with their image and with that chapter of their career. So whether it was Kanan or Bourdais or PK Jr. or Scott Speed or Jeff Ward, who did a stint, that was just a crazy time for me to sit with him over those months and understand his story and two-wheel to four-wheel. And I never had an opportunity, one, because I didn't have enough wisdom or knowledge or experience, but two, just because of the way the cards and chips were falling, to be able to foster young talent. And it's been extremely gratifying to watch them grow and to watch us grow at the same time. And GTD is a major part of the entrance and the ability for us to do that. At GTD Pro, when you look at that field of pilots and drivers, there's not a lot of guys that are still coming into their own, right?
Phenomenal.
They're seasoned vets. In GTD, that's not the case.
Let's close on this. You represent Lexus. You represent Toyota TRD. Your team, you are the face of Lexus's professional motor racing efforts in this country. The thing I want to close on is what I refer to as Sully style. Everything is always crisp and in place, and that gets filtered down to everything that you all do.
Yeah.
It's one of the main reasons that all of your sponsors, manufacturers, are so in love with what you do.
Yeah.
You stand out here in this paddock. Where does that come from?
Thanks for that. It was born in 2011. Thomas Schechter, the Red Line Extreme car. And I think inherently I'm always that way. I'm always trying to chase perfection. I love loud things. Some of my favorites were like 1980s Cowie and motocross and the neon and that whole thing. Like, I'm still so in love with that vibe, right? So it's no wonder that maybe that we're a bit loud and that we're neon. But in all seriousness, headed into 2011, no one knew who I was. There was no trust whatsoever, and I knew that if this was a one-shot deal for me, which was the way I dreamt it up to be, this has got to be noisy. I have to make noise, because I didn't expect to finish in the top 10 at the Indy 500 the first time out. I didn't expect any particular finishing order. but I didn't expect to have a lot of success, and I knew that if I ever wanted to go again, that this thing had to be loud, and that the worst thing that could happen to us in a sport that is the entertainment business is that nobody noticed. Because if no one noticed, there's no way that I'm coming back to do this again. So I damn near made sure that everybody noticed that we were here, and I couldn't, at the time, directly impact how we ran, but I sure as hell could affect how we looked. That's how it was born. Thomas Schechter, the Redline car, it's pretty special time, and he bought in and he really helped fling the colors, if you will, no pun intended. But from it, there was an identity created, but more importantly, there was a way of going racing that was created, which is that if you're gonna pay this much attention to the fit and finish of clothing or the overall look of a race car livery or how our 18-wheelers look or our garages look, it sets the tone as a trickle down for all of the rest of the competitive pieces of your organization. Where an engineer or a driver or what have you, where they could say, wow, you know, promotion and marketing and look, that's not really my thing. Yep, we understand that, but we're gonna approach it the exact same way that we do our look and our vibe and our liveries and our brand, right? So I think it's been infectious for the team, and now headed into our 15th year, people know that if you're gonna come here, there's gonna be expectations on how you are gonna go prepare to go racing. And of course, you're gonna have to look a certain way. Yes, that's true, but it is a trickle down from it, right? Which is how we prepare. We try to leave no stone unturned. And the look, I think, is kind of the umbrella for that mentality. I've watched Roger from the first week that I became obsessed with the sport. How they operate, how they run their pit lanes, how they run their teams. You know, there's these people that say that they're self-made and what have you, which I think is completely ridiculous, because along the way you've taken pieces of people that you want to emulate and that you hold in a really high regard and a lot of respect, right? And a lot of senior competitors in this paddock with a lot of experience and a lot of wins. I've taken pieces of what they do and how they hold themselves and how they operate, you know, and so maybe I'm a sum of all those parts along the way of seeing some of these other individuals and teams and how they've done it. But certainly I'll never forget seeing Roger's car the first time, seeing the trailers with the polished chrome half and half, and going, what is this? It's like, I'm like, this is a spaceship. What is this deal, right? And then you just notice that if I'm noticing this, as you get a few years down the road in a team ownership, then a partner is going to notice it, or a potential driver is going to notice it, and there's just this general feel that when you see a competitive organization that's buttoned up, what it does is it exudes trust. It exudes trust, because if we're willing to put that much time, effort, resources, and attention into something that quote unquote maybe doesn't matter to get you across the finish line first, then how much attention and resources are we willing to put into things that make our race cars and our drivers go quick?
James Sully Sullivan, y'all.
Good
Thank
job,
you, my
man.
guy.
Love that, brother.
Thank you.
Watch us this season on NBC and Peacock. Be sure to subscribe to IMSA on YouTube and enjoy our brand new IMSA Endurance Hour podcast. And if you're interested in digital activation in motorsports, visit IMSA.com/partnership.